Hello. Thank you so much for being here today. It is my great honor to be able to introduce our next storyteller of the day. Her name is Victoria Whalen. She is from Georgia, USA, but has strong family ties in Saratoga Springs, New York. She studied biology, urban and environmental sustainability, and she explores the intersection of race and air pollution and COVID 10 vaccine distribution. She has advocated for environmental justice with organizations such as Our Climate and New York Renews. She has worked with endangered species protection and land use policies and climate litigation. Let's please give Victoria a quick applause and thank her so much for being able to join us today.
Good. Awesome. Thank you for that amazing introduction. Once again, my name is Victoria Whalen. As she said, I come from the United States, from the down south in Georgia, but my family does have ties in upstate New York. And I am currently on Kalapuya land in Oregon in my final year of law school at the University of Oregon. And I'm just so happy and honored to be here and to everyone's presence here in Dubai and also for the online viewers. And so I just want to start by kind of giving you guys a deep dive into my life, my experiences, and kind of what got me here today and into my activism. I have asthma. I come from a low-income family. And growing up down south, it's kind of always been difficult to talk about climate. Even though you're surrounded by nature, I also grew up in North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Even though you're surrounded, people don't necessarily make a connection of what we're doing, that things that we're doing affects the planet. So I've always kind of been, what they call a tree hugger, an environmentalist. The kids at school would always be like, why do you care so much? Why are you part of the reduce, reuse, recycle programming? And it's because we have to. It's so beautiful. Green's my favorite color. It's so peaceful. It's so calm. And it's the air that we breathe, the land that we are on, and the feet, and what kind of grounds us into kind of everything that we do today. Our cells are connected to everything that we touch. Since I'm standing on this stage, I'm now a part of this stage, and this stage is a part of this ground, and this ground is a part of the core, and the core is a part of the sky, because everything is working together. And so that's kind of how I feel about my activism and my journey. I went to school in New York City at a school called Marymount Manhattan College. I studied biology and urban environmental sustainability. And the reason why I added that second major was because my first year that I moved to New York City, I lived in Midtown Manhattan, which is a lot of pollution. It's very busy, very industrial. I mean, the New York City complex is real. And for the first time in about 7, 8 years, I had a massive, massive asthma attack. And it was so foreign to me that I really didn't understand what was happening. I thought, maybe it's just like shortness of breath, this, that, and the other. But actually, the longer I sat there, the more I realized my lungs were constricting and I just couldn't breathe. And it wasn't until later and towards the end of my undergrad career that I realized I had that asthma attack because of where I moved to, because of the pollution that I now was exposed to. And I said, if that can happen to me, a transplant from Georgia who came all the way here just to go to school here for 3, 4 years, what's happening to the people that have lived there their entire lives, to the other Black, brown little boys and girls in the low-income communities all around the city? And so I did my final senior thesis. It was a quantitative analysis of asthma, air pollution, and the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, because I really wanted them to have proof, to have some evidence that there is a systemic issue when it does come to the environment and the injustices that happen. It's not happening equally. It's happening all over the world. Air pollution happens all over the world, water contamination. But if you really look at the stats, it's happening to the low income, to the Black, brown communities, to the disabled, to the LGBTQ plus IA, and any other minorities that you can think of. And it's purposeful. And sure enough, my research, my 30 pages, found the correlations between race, asthma, and where they were living. They were living closer to the factories, closer to the traffic stops, closer to these waste treatment facilities, and it all kind of just correlates together. And another interesting side note is now, like I said, I'm on Kayapua land in Oregon, all the way across the United States in the Pacific Northwest, pretty much the farthest you can get from Georgia. I took a road trip all the way over there without ever seeing my apartment, without ever knowing where I was gonna stay. I just needed to get there. Time was running out. I just needed to have a home. I found it on Craigslist online. There wasn't any pictures, but it was cheap. It had a 1-bedroom. I was like, this is perfect. Okay, we're gonna get it. I arrived. I took my first law school class, and it was a land use class. And my professor told me that the area that I'm currently living in is Eugene, which is the city that I'm in, only sacrifice zone, only environmental injustice sacrifice zone, where we get 99% of the city's pollution. 99%. And this is a big city. It's a big university college town. And somehow me, a transplant, an asthmatic, low-income black girl from Georgia, somehow still ended up in these sacrifice zones without really any other external pressure. That doesn't seem right to me. And so noticing these patterns over and over again, I've just made it my mission, and really the kind of crux of who I am, is to really advocate for these people that are experiencing the same experiences as me. I want to be that beacon, that megaphone, the database of knowledge and of information to really help people explain what is going on to them in their communities, as well as educate and uplift and make sure that these voices are being heard, because my story is not unique. It's not the only one. That's happening everywhere to so many other people. But it's my duty, because I have this platform, I have this ability to be in spaces like this, to be talking to you all, to really use that and to advocate. And that's where storytelling and art and activism really come in. I didn't disclose this, but I do have a musical theater background. Acting is my one and true pleasure. I've been doing it since about the age of 7. I've competed in competitions, I've won awards and accolades. I want to create movies. I love TV and film. I also love poetry. I'm a poet. I love to write. I've written short stories. And the common thread among all my work that I've done is climate change, is health effects, it's disparities, because those are the stories that really matter. And just to put it in perspective, I want to read you a poem that I wrote that kind of encapsulates the thoughts that I've been feeling leading up to COP. And it's called "The Worlds Will Lose." Lately, at night I sit and wonder about the worlds we've lost. Communities, ecologies, histories, is it ever worth the cost? I ponder the existences that now cease to be. Was it slow? Was it fast? Was it agonizing? I can't help but wonder about the worlds we've lost. Clusters of youth enjoying the humid summer breeze, children running rampant barefoot in the streets. City living never smelled so sweet, but instead of the scent of the flower of God, carcinogens, carnations have turned to carcinogens, chemicals cascading through adolescence, clawing at their throats and lungs, constricting like a boa, but instead of a python, it's a byproduct of corporate greed, always outweighing community needs, never giving back. And I can't help but wonder, why were they all black? Lately, in the morning, I smile and I remember we've solved the worst. Spring is no longer silent, sulfur no longer showering down, sites of villainous hazardous waste saved by superfunds like a real-life Marvel show, slowing the degradation of species so few, sustaining a commitment to developing new views. But then the skies once again darken their hues, and I sit and wonder about the worlds we'll lose. The children still choking, the communities still crying, the climate still clashing, the earth, our planet, our mother still dying. The, the power of storytelling, the power of poetry, the power of art is to evoke emotions, is to create connections, to bring back memories. Without it, change is not possible. It's what makes lawmakers understand the realities that are happening now, the realities that are happening in the future. It's what makes change happen. I'm very US-centric, so I'm going to bring up one of my favorite examples, Rachel Carson's A Silent Spring. Because of that book, because of her sitting down, listening to her community members every day, sitting on this porch, on this swing, noticing the birds no longer sang, the grasshoppers no longer chirped, the rivers were running dry, there was no more fish in the streams. And it wasn't just her. She went around to her community members and she asked those same stories. She said, "Do you notice there's no more music in the air? It's stagnant, it's still." And because of that, she wrote a book. She wrote a book that reached so many people in 1962. She was a biologist, not even an author. I'm a biologist. I have my degree in biology. I'm about to be a law JD student, have my law degree. And I still write. I write short stories. I write short fiction. Because that's the power of words. That's the power of taking the abstract and putting it into something that people can relate to. And everyone has that story. No matter how big or small you are, no matter if you think that it's insignificant, it isn't. We are here at COP, at these global spaces, to advocate for not only ourselves, but for our communities back home. And for me, being in these spaces, it's really clear that it's lacking my perspectives, my community stories. And that's not right. It's not okay. It's not okay how inaccessible it is to get here, to be here, to have people sit down and listen to you. And I thank all of you for being here in this room right now and just taking in these words. But I want you to think about that when you go home to somebody else. When you go home and there's a little kid on the street or your little cousin, and they might be asking you 1,000,001 questions. They might be bothering you, bugging you with the why. Answer them. They want to know. And it's because they have a unique experience. They have a unique viewpoint that you might never have thought about in 1,000,000 years. But because they use their voice, they use their words, or maybe they even drew you a picture. Because at the end of the day, storytelling isn't just what we say or what we read. It's what we draw. It's what we hear. It's the music that plays. It's the artwork. There's so much beautiful art in this space. There's a reason why we have so many wonderful art museums and people pay hundreds of dollars just to stand in line to look at the Mona Lisa, and they wait for hours and hours because it's evoking something. It's bringing something to their brains, to their forefront. And imagine we could do that with climate change. Imagine we can do that with environmental injustices. Imagine we can do that, but centered on Black, brown, Indigenous voices, the ones who have already been telling the stories in our own communities. And imagine your community expanding. And it's not just the people who look like you or the people that are in your same state, in the same country, but it's also the people online. It's the people you might reach if you make a quick TikTok video. It's the people you might reach when you are live streaming an event that you're at. I'm honored to be here today in this space. I am the media fellow for Black Girl Environmentalist. I also do social media work for Action for the Climate Emergency. And I've somehow found myself in this position, not kind of accidentally. As you can tell, I do have that performing background, but I never imagined that I would be able to use my skills and create content that is accessible, that is reachable. And anybody can do that. Anyone. Anyone has a phone, can just sit there, put it up, make a 60-second video on their climate story. Right now, I could make one of how the sun is so hot that I probably look a mess on this stage right now because I'm like sweating buckets. And it shouldn't be this hot. At least for me, I know when I go back to Georgia, it will probably be this hot, and we are in Christmas. It's Christmas time. And when I go home, I expect the weather to be just like this. And that in and of itself is a climate story, because that shouldn't be happening. It really is just having the courage to just take the time to just go up to one person and be like, do you have a second? Just 1 minute. 60 seconds, it's so easy. A quick little blurb, a quick little spiel, who you are, what this moment is, and what it means to you. And something else that's interesting as we're in these spaces, it always also focuses on the doom and gloom. We only focus on stories that are sad, that are depressing, that have trauma. We see in the news all of the stories about the floods, about the fires, about the earthquakes. But we never see the stories about the solutions, about the hopes, about the dreams. And that's also the power of storytelling. It's switching that narrative that we are not at the end of the world. It's just beginning. This planet is still new. We are new. Change is inevitable, even though it might seem slow, it might seem draining, it might seem taxing, and like I said, it might seem like nobody's listening. But I guarantee you that someone is. I guarantee you that you are not alone in this fight. And I can guarantee you that no matter what you say, it has a purpose, here, now, and forever. My final takeaway, and this is kind of geared towards the older generation, I will admit. I am only 24. I consider myself a youth. Please, 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 have a bit more humility, have a bit more patience and kindness and respect towards the younger generation. We understand you have been here longer. We understand your histories and your stories, and we want to learn and we want to take and absorb. But we want to share with you our experiences because they are still alike. We want to share with you our solutions because at the end of the day, we're still in this climate crisis, so clearly some solutions that y'all have proposed have not worked yet. Maybe take a listen to us. We might have some new ideas, some new things to say, some new perspectives. It's not that hard. I think it might be one of the easiest things that we can do as a community, as we're in these spaces. And it really fills me with so much hope and happiness and positivity, knowing that this isn't the end, knowing that my story doesn't end right now, that once I step off this stage, that was it. Y'all are never going to see me again. Some words will resonate with you. They'll stick with you. That's what happens. That's how human language and our information, our knowledge is stored. The brain consumes everything. The brain never forgets. And so one day I hope when you're randomly in the United States, when you're randomly in Georgia, you think about that one time, how you were in Dubai and this random Black girl from Georgia was on stage talking about storytelling, rambling on about her life. She did a random poem at some point, like, what was that? I hope you remember it in these moments. And I hope after this session and after these crazy 2 weeks of COP, which I have been a part of in the Blue Zone, dealing with all the negotiations, I really hope that you bring your stories back to your homes, back to your communities. And the first thing that you do when you get off the plane or when you go back to your hotel room is to really tell someone how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and how you think you can make a difference. And always, 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 and on a positive, and on your hopes, your dreams. Because at the end of the day, that's what keeps the movement going. That's what makes change happen. That's what puts the power back in our hands. Thank you.